have to trust those guys to know what
Well,
they're getting. They have to know who the people are.
Well,
from
they know their nominees because they had their nominees. They just didn't win.
Right.
But there's 6 cameras and there's only 4 of the 6 that are really of the 6 faces. You rolling?
Yeah, I want to ask about
444.
I want to ask about some of the highlights from some of the Oscar shows you've done, just to get a quick comment about them. First is, I think it was 1999, the creation of a pre-show that was the network did. What was involved with that, and was that? Well, just tell me about that.
You know, the creation of the pre-show by the network in 1999 was to take it kind of out of our hands to do an arrival sequence. Prior to these pre-shows, we would always have to put up a unit and address, as the director and producers of the main show, at least 20 minutes of the arrivals, and then quickly edit a sequence before we went on the air. And, you know, in 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, look at it and then roll it back and then start the main show. And I think that the networks also saw that cable in 1999 were doing their own pre-shows. You know, A&E and Biography and E Entertainment, the E Channel, and so why give them the main angle on it? So they took it over themselves, and we're glad that they did, because they're very extensive now. They're usually a half an hour, and it precludes them going and having to do it as a separate unit altogether.
In 1999, Elia Kazan won an honorary Oscar. What was the decision-making process about showing, supporters and detractors on camera?
Yeah, that's a good question with the Elia Kazan, and it's an important question. I'm proud of that moment in television. Needless to say, when I was at UCLA, Elia lectured. He was still vibrant in filmmaking, and he was very important in filmmaking. And thank you. And so when that decision was made to give him this honorary Oscar, I clearly remembered the Blacklist days. I was at Grant High School there, which was an industry school, on the other side of the hill in Sherman Oaks, where friends of mine's parents had been blackballed. Some had committed suicide. So, I mean, the whole McCarthy era was heavily embedded in my consciousness. I wasn't a young director who didn't know what the heck that was all about, but still, this was an award for his filmmaking, and it was getting controversial. Gil and I Cates was producing, and we were getting questions at the press conferences all the time. How do you feel? What are you going to do? And I said, I'm a live event director. I'm going to show what's going on. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not a censor. I'm going to show what's going on. And, that was that. And then the best thing was that, again, I spoke about Gil and his nurturing, quality. He goes, "Come here, my boy," before the show went on. And, this was maybe the day before. He goes, "I don't want you to have any pressure about this Elia Kazan thing. I'm not going to tell you what to do." He goes, "You do what you do. Just do what you do. Nobody can tell you what to do. There's a faction that doesn't want to give it to him. There's a faction that doesn't want to show him. There's a faction that wants to show nobody's going to stand there." He goes, "You just do what you do. I trust you." And I said, okay. And so, I'd like to say I didn't think about it, but I did think about it because it was on everybody's mind. And then the moment came, and we gave out the award. And like I cut to the shot, and people were standing. I cut to another shot, some were sitting. I cut around, I cut to the stage. I covered the event. I cut back to Spielberg and Hanks, and suddenly they're standing again, and they were sitting before. And then I covered the event, and then we just moved on. And then the next day in the reviews, it said, Elia Kazan, controversial, blacklisting, McCarthy era, was given an honorary Oscar. And it was nice to see that director Louis J. Horvitz did the right thing, period. That was one of the best reviews I think I've ever gotten. That's all I would have asked. I wanted to do the right thing.
The 2002 Oscar broadcast was the first Oscar telecast after 9/11. What was that like, given the atmosphere in the country?
This was a very, very difficult period after 9/11. As you know, we did 3 versions of the Emmys, or potentially that, and then we had to go on into the December Kennedy Centers after 9/11, and then we're in 2000, and we're in there, and it was on everybody's mind that, again, let's just do the right thing. And it was discussed, and I think the ice was kind of broken on the tenacity and the strength of the American will when I finished the final Emmys after 9/11, and I was asked to fly to New York to do the concert for VH1, for the concert for New York City. And we celebrated the surviving family members and police and fire department and rescue workers in that concert, and the Who came out there, all the English contingent, and sang "We Won't Be Fooled Again." It was a rebirth of that city, so that broke the feeling of, we don't have to walk on eggshells now. We're back. We haven't forgotten. We're back. But it was carefully thought out.
But the Oscars was in like February or March of 2002, I believe. Was there a red carpet that year?
No, are you asking about 9/11, or are you asking about the Iraq
no,
War?
9/11. But I think you talked about the Emmys, but the Oscars, which was a few months later, was there still a
in 2002?
Right.
Yes.
That
Oh,
first,
yeah.
Was
yeah,
that
yeah.
different? Because was there still an aftermath of the feeling about 9/11?
On the Oscars. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
on the Oscars. That's okay.
I think I read the Emmy question when I read this stuff. Well, I actually, what I was saying was that by the time we got to the Oscars, we had already done the concert for New York City.
Right.
That was still in the year 2001.
Right.
At the end, like 3 weeks, the week after the Oscars. So when we got to the Oscars in 2002, we had a conscious do the right thing, but I believe that we had the red carpet because I remember sitting on the red carpet with either Frank Pearson or Bob Ramey and Gil, and sitting on that carpet and then looking at Gil and going, we couldn't be a bigger target if they were coming to drop bombs on us if we advertised. But I believe that we did have the red carpet, but with less fanfare. And we did have the best song nominations, and we did purge ahead. But with the ice already being broken with the concert for New York City, because right after the concert for New York City came the Kennedy Center, and I sat with George Stevens at the end of 2001. I just emailed him about that, where he goes, "Give me a sense of what we should do with the feeling, what's going on out there with the people. You just did that concert." I'm going, well, everybody's mortified and hurt and broken, but tenaciously recovering.
Okay. And we know that you directed several of the Emmy broadcasts too. Let me ask you about some of the hosts and the approach to how you had to work with them when they directed. Let's start with Ellen DeGeneres, with her style of kind of going off the stage and in the audience, backstage. What were the challenges involved with directing with her as host?
Ellen DeGeneres and I are very good friends. And I say very good friends, not like we break bread and see each other every week. But the first time she hosted the the Emmys, I totally understood her comedy. She was, again, Roseanne. She was really her own person. I loved her sense of comedy, and she was great to have before. She hosted once before we did the 911 when she came in and hosted it for that. And her brother wrote for her along with the writing staff. So the fun thing with Ellen is that she always, broke the fourth wall and liked to do stuff backstage and liked to do stuff in the audience. And so again, like a good study of the films, I knew her style, and it was just a question of the best way to work with her is to go ahead and try 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 pieces, and by the time we hit the air, she will have weeded out what she knows works and what doesn't. But it's best to try it. So it was good that she came in to do. I believe it was the second one that we did with our relationship. We did it. It was rehearsed in New York. It was in both coasts. There was Gandolfini and those guys in New York, and us in L.A., and we did the dress rehearsal. And while we were doing the dress rehearsal, unbeknownst to anybody, I was told by an executive high up that we weren't going to air because they were going to announce that we were going into Iraq or Afghanistan, I think it was. And so that this show was never going to air. We were going to preempt it because of that presidential announcement. And I believe that we taped the dress rehearsal. It was so complicated. And I remember that when it was announced, we were, after the dress rehearsal, and the president came out and announced it, everybody that was getting ready to do the live show, especially Ellen, was just wandering around, wondering what the heck are we going to do? What's going on? And, we were all primed, and I went right to the stage and stood with her, and she was, devastated that here we were going into the next phase of retaliation, and you know what that can all mean. We're in it today. So it was really I think it was a really trying moment for her. Not to mention the rest of us, but particularly for her.
The broadcast that she did do, where her tendency to, the style of going into the audience, were those all planned? I mean, did you know always where she was going, and did you know only at the moment, or that was all planned in advance, really?
No, most of the planned audience pieces had to be worked out because we did a split screen where she sat in one chair, and then I did a split screen where somebody was in New York, and it looked like they were right next to her. When we ended up finally using her, she stood over the edge of the orchestra pit looking down into the, like I guess she was going to fall and somebody threw her a tambourine. And so all of that, she never blindsided me. But if she was ever going to go out in the audience, as any good, Conan or her or anybody, Chris or Steve, tell Lou through the stage manager, I'm going to talk about so and so, or I'm going to go down in the audience and then I'm going to run back. Some of that I get. Some of it just happens when somebody comes out and they start going back and forth with Jack Nicholson. I get a camera on Jack, I get a camera on there, and I go into the zone and we cover it. But Ellen her audience pieces are pre-planned.
Comment on Conan O'Brien as a host with his quirky humor and, like overhead shot doing a telestrator of...
Loved it. I loved Conan. That was Jeff Ross, his producer too. And Conan is just a great guy and a funny man and a great set of showrunners and producers. And he asked me to do the show for him. And that's when I went back with Ken Ehrlich, and because we had done it once before. It was the second time we did it. And what's good about him and his team is that he has quirky ideas, and he might have 10 or 11 or 12 of them. And then, as a director, now here's a performer. Earlier you said, is there a relationship with the director and a performer? If it's music, no, because they've been doing it in on the road and they bring it in and it's already prepackaged and you find out they're a gag and you shoot it. Now with the comedians, it's different if it's Gary Shandling or whoever's hosting, but with Conan, he'd already been sending me the pages with Jeff Ross, talking to me on the phone every day. We'd look at what was necessary, how are we going to get a shot for the telestrator, because we had to get cameras in certain positions and all of that. And then he would come in and then we would go through all of the 11 bits as if this is what it was going to look. So I would plan and do, and we would shoot it and look at it, and then by airtime, because of how much time we had on the Emmys, he would decide which ones we were going to do and which ones we weren't the night before, and then we would eliminate those that didn't work, and we would do it, and it was a gas.
And the most recent Emmy broadcast, 2008, with the 5 reality show hosts. Can you comment on that?
I'm not in the loop of. You asked a question about pre-production. You know, when I'm just directing, I take what they give me, and the producers will tell me, here's what we got, here's what we're going to do. As a matter of fact, you know, Ken, you know, had announced it. Ken Ehrlich had announced it in the papers, but I was out of the country, so I didn't really see it. You know that we had the 5 reality show hosts, and then I came in, and then you know, but every day Ken and I would talk on the phone, and we knew the challenge ahead of us, and so I knew that they were going to come out and do something, and you know, that's when I'm happy to be the director and not the producer, because the producer has to get them to do it, the director has to cover it.
What has your working relationship with the Television Academy been like?
Oh, Addis. I love Addis. It's, you know, been very good to me. I've probably directed almost most of the Emmys in my lifetime, with the exception of a few. I did them with Don Mischer. I did them with Ken Ehrlich. I did it with Gary Smith when 911 came on the 3rd time. Addis is such a necessary organization for the preservation of television and for the education of people that still really want to make a difference, do television the right way, the art of picture making that we talked about. Addis is the Mecca. You know, I was really glad to see when they, you know, when I started out, we didn't have the organization out on Lancashire. I played on Lancashire, where that place was built in a strip bar when I had one of my bands. And so they got that land, the big Emmys out there, the whole, everybody that works for it tirelessly, you know, moneyless in a lot of ways, because it's, you know, it's educational. Most of the people that sit on the boards, John Schaffner, John Moffat in my division, Bill Lee, just on and on. You know, they do tireless work. I'm a shallow guy. If I can't adorn my body or drive at 228 miles an hour, I have a tough time getting behind it. But I have gone to some of the meetings and the committee meetings, and I can understand why government is broken, because it's real hard. There's a lot of divisions, and there's a lot of people that, you know, want separate Emmy categories. Already we have too many awards on. Addis keeps it all going. You know, I'm happy that, you know, John Schaffner is the new president of it, because I think for the first time we have a working production designer who's heading up the organization, who's actually working in it in the areas where we give out so many awards at the arts and crafts the weekend before. And, you know, for the cameramen, for the technical directors, for, you know, all the different, you know, awards that can't get on the air, and sometimes they get on the air, sometimes they don't with the new rules. Addis just keeps it together, and I think, like, as good as the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences protects their art of filmmaking, Addis absolutely equals them in spades. So I've had a good relationship with the organization, and I'm just blessed that I've been asked as many times to direct their big night and my big night, because it's a salute to our art.
I want to ask you one more question about the Emmy telecast that followed 9/11. This was 2001. The show was postponed 2 times before it finally aired. Were there elements from the earlier shows that made it into the final broadcast, or did things have to be like totally changed every time? Was it like starting at 0 again?
Yeah, I'm just thinking for a second. Now, Don Mischer was producing. We had a show. It was the Monday or when this whole I think it was Monday when this whole thing went down, and it was early in the morning. My wife woke me up saying we're being attacked, and and because her mother was calling from Washington D.C. Her father, Captain Lee Leeming, Harold Leeming, was at the Pentagon. So all of a sudden this was happening, and here we were getting ready to make a television show. And it looked like we were at war, and things were going crazy, and people were calling, do we go to the shrine? Do we don't go to the shrine? We have a show. What are we going to do? I just said, we're in your homes right now until we hear what's going on. Don Mischer and I were on the phone. The next day we came in, we started evaluating what we were going to do. We knew we weren't going to do that show, and then we were going to wait, and how long could we wait? The second one, Don stayed. He had a commitment to do the Olympics, so we were really pushing it. But the big issue was what was happening. What were we going to do? I mean, should we do this? Should we not do this? There was many reasons to do this because we're Americans and we just don't run and hide. And at the same token, we want to have the proper respect for the fallen. So that was constantly, again, at us with the producers. The elements of the first one into the second one changed immensely. The writing changed. Everything changed. The timbre of the whole circumstance was different. It was going to be just a straight ahead presentation. We were going to do different things. As it was, we didn't do that one. That was the one I was talking about where we were going between New York and L.A. And after that one went away, then Gary came in because Don had to leave. And then the third one, we finally got on, but it went in an entirely different direction. Gary came in, we changed the set, we started celebrating television. We brought I believe the television kind of set out. It got changed around, and we try to kind of defocus, I think, in a way, from the 9/11 incident to make it be, a relief from the circumstance 3 weeks later. I think our homage to the situation was Barbra Streisand singing and the fallen wall, and then that was a different content altogether, and then we were out.
I have a question about production numbers. How do production numbers for the Emmys differ from production numbers for the Oscars? And how important are they, especially musical numbers, to the Emmys?
Well, production numbers in general on television take you back to that question of why isn't there musical variety on television anymore? Because so many people today, and the age group of the younger people watching, don't understand what. If it's on the Tonys, it's okay. It's a musical number, but it came off a Broadway play, so a musical could be there. But out of the clear blue sky, is Ian Fraser actually going to create a production number like we did in your show of shows? The Melton Berle. Is Jack Benny? Is Dennis Day going to come out and sing? I mean, people would go like, "What is that?" So it's hard for anybody to understand it, unless it was High School Musical. Then we were on the verge of doing High School Musical, but it got complicated and it's costly to do these things. People might have understood it because they saw the movie. Now, the difference between a production number in the Emmys, if it were if it was from one of the nominated musical variety shows, let's say, if it was Tina Turner's concert tour and she came out and did it, like we did with Bette Midler one year because it was from her nominated show, then there's sense to it. To do a production number is not necessarily, doesn't work. However, Ellen did a production number because she was doing a comedy thing with it. And Conan did a production number because he was doing a comedy thing with it. So it has to fit. The difference in the Academy Awards is we went away from doing production numbers. In Marty Passetta's day, it was different. Again, it's in the 60s, and you could do Shaft and you could do all the hit songs because musical variety was still the king of the highway. However, now in these last years that I've been directing, it's the 5 nominated songs, and you try to get Paul McCartney to sing it, and you try to get Amy Mann to come out and do it, and try to get Paul Simon to sing his song from the movies. And you either do them spread out or you do them 3 and 2, and then it has a sense because you get a flavor of the nominated song. But other than that, I don't think you have room to do a musical production number just for its own sake.
We've talked about the truck a couple of times. Where exactly are you in general, depending on the venue? Where are you when you're directing these live events?
That's a good question, because I always say, when I look back at my life, I will have either been going to work by going through the kitchen of some hotel casino, past the garbage trucks, past the dumpsters, down a loading dock that's knee-deep in sewage and water, where they're dumping out the food from the last night's convention, and then up a set of stairs I go to a truck that looks like a Beacon's moving van, and you go inside of it, and suddenly you're in Star Trek on the bridge. But you'd never know it if you looked at where it was I sat. It's on the back of a loading dock. This is the only place a 40-foot semi can fit, and many times it's not only one 40-foot semi, it's 2 and 3 and 4 with ancillary trucks for screens and maybe double audio trucks. But in a way, it's kind of a cool thing. In a way, I think we should just paint Beacon's Movers on the side, or Sam's U-Haul, because it's kind of interesting to like walk up into this truck. Doesn't even look like a motorhome. They're Expandos, and then when you go in there, it's totally dark, and suddenly there's 165 monitors, and there's thousands of mixing consoles, and then there's these stools, and then there's headsets, and it's like you've gone into a Captain Nemo's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I always say, I'm going back into the submarine now, people. You can tell me what's happening, out there in the water. And that's what it's like.
And you're wearing a tux.
Well, you got to dress for the occasion, even though that you're only shooting me from the waist up. I got my shoes on!
When you go live, at that countdown, when you're live, how does the atmosphere in the truck change? What is the atmosphere in the truck?
The 10 count to live in the truck in the early days for me, I mean really early days, my palms were sweating so much, I couldn't figure out what was happening. But it was like when I was in track and field in high school, and you get in the blocks and you get ready, runner set, and this little, your bowels want to drop, you're filled with this kind of angst, but you're waiting for the adrenaline to kick in. But you got to be real careful because, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all you have to do is go roll tape or fade up. But it's like the first time you've jumped out of an airplane, or you were to hang glider and jumped off a cliff, when it fades up, you're jumping off a precipice. And you're just going to hope that those first 10 or 15 seconds after you've jump that the chute's going to open up, or that the glider's going to not break on you, or that you're going to get up on the skis, or you're going to drive 228 miles an hour right up against a wall, racing. And it has all of those permutations of, like, you could die. You feel like you could die. And though, fortunately, we can't, except in the press, perhaps, you do feel like, if I fuck this up, I'm going to die. Especially if you're the leader and you're calling the cues and you've demanded that everybody be perfect and you can't do it. That is really the time that I want to retire, when I can't do it. And I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to execute my cue calling and take us down the path to a win, a victory, winner's circle, win the race, win the football game, whatever analogy you want to have. I feel that everybody else has worked so hard. I want to put us in the winner's circle. I have that responsibility. And here's the thing. You ask, what is the feeling for everybody else around me? There's always a good show, break a leg, it's everybody's kind of like, saying, see you on the other side of hell, in their own way. And I'm going, yeah, good show. Because really, I've sat in this chair prior to the show, probably in a tuxedo, for 45 minutes, before I've got to go on the air. Other people, I hear they just sit down and it is what it is. But, a race car driver's in the cockpit of the car. He sits in it. The pilot, they're on autopilot, but if you were flying an F-16 or an F-18 and you're going to go into 6 or 7 G-force, you're going to sit in that cockpit before you take off. And everybody with me, everybody feels the same way, for the simple reason that the job that they're performing as one of the teammates, they want to do perfect. They so badly want to have a perfect game, a perfect race, as much as I do. And I know that. I genuinely know how much it means for them to play well too. So that's the feeling. We're just, I will say this for me, what I ask for of myself, I'm not sure what everybody asks for themselves. Some people might go, oh God, I didn't practice, please let it come out right. But for me, I just ask that God give me the focus I need that night to scan those monitors, to duplicate the drills we've been doing for 2.5 or 3 days, to go up and down the field like we've practiced, and to be so alert and attuned to what's going to unfold, things I've never before in my life seen. And it's about that focus of attention that I ask God give me that power.
Do you have any rituals that you go through before you go on the air?
I like to slap around Matt Carvetti, my new assistant, a lot before I go on the air. It's just, he just goes, may I have another, sir? No. I think that, most people that are going to do adrenaline-driven situation, their offices, their cockpit of their car, their airplane, and it's just, you're going to take off. Ritualistically, I get ready, and then I sit, and I try to just be in the chair. And things are going on around me, and then there's well wishes, and people are real loose. There's a lot of stuff going on. The pre-shows are going on. I dial them out. I don't want to know what's going on in the pre-show. If it was great, tell me about it. But I I'm ready to see the red lights turn to green. So my ritual, I would say, is one, to make sure I go to the bathroom before I go on the air, because it's a long haul. 2, to make sure that ritualistically, I repeat probably the first, 4 or 5 cues of how we're going to jump off the cliff or start the race, come off the line, and then it's a commitude. And then it's changed a lot in the last 8 or 9 years. I feel with experience, there's more confidence that, I'm going to call the right cue. So ritualistically, it's just being in the cockpit.
Can you ever be fully prepared for a live broadcast?
I think you can be, for a live broadcast, as prepared as the work that you've done prior to going into that particular live broadcast. If you've done the homework, done the drills, you should, by all rights, be able to handle the circumstances. Inevitably, you're never going to be prepared for a miscue, a misfire, a microphone going out, calling an A-roll when it's a B-roll, but you're protected by your teammates, and so you're going to make mental errors. It's like a football game or a race. You're going to have a good pit stop. You're going to have a bad pit stop. You're going to overcome it. And can you be fully prepared? I think you're prepared, as prepared as you can be. But we all try for the perfect show, and then people call up and go, "It was so perfect, we thought you taped it." So you don't want to introduce error. It'll come on its own. But when the error comes, in the early days, I used to beat myself up whenever I'd make a mistake in the beginning, and I would harbor it for the next 3 or 4 or 5 cues until, somebody would, my technical director, John Field, would shake me out of it and goes, "Come on, man, get back in it." And then I've had people sit next to me that, blew 2 cues in a row, and then they'd shut down. And I'd go, in the first commercial break, I'd just hit them. I'm going, "Forget it. Nobody gives a shit. Let's go, man. We got a lot of game ahead of us." And I think that's how you have to look at live television. The objectivity is to get it out there, do it the best you can, and then big hurrah at the end, and thank God that you made it through it.
How many hours of television would you say you've directed to date?
That changes all the time, but I believe it's probably over 6,000 hours. It's got to be at least that.
What are you working on currently?
Well, currently I'm doing an interview with you, Steve. Right
Good
here
one,
at
good one.
9381 Flicker Way.
And then right after this?
Yeah. Right after this, I'm going to slap Matt around a little bit, just on general principle. Now, he's a good kid from Syracuse. No, we're getting ready to go to do the Kennedy Center Honors, where I will be dealing with Miss Barbara Streisand and Morgan Freeman and The Who, Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend and Twyla Tharp and George Jones. And that's being prepared by George Stevens Jr. and Michael and Allie Stevens. And we'll get on a plane and go there and try to make that a great show.
What advice would you give to an aspiring television director today?
I have one in Matt Carvetti, who actually came up to me after 2 Oscars ago and introduced himself. He'd worked on the show and said if he could audit me in the truck, because he'd studied at Syracuse and he just wanted to get some booth experience. And I go, "Why the fuck would you want to do that?" And he goes, "Because I love live event directing. I think it's the greatest job in the world." And it nearly brought a tear to my eye, because it was really, exciting to hear that somebody was as stoked about that job that I do as quite obviously I am, as much as I tend to demean it at times. It's not brain surgery, but in a lot of ways you better be just as good as a brain surgeon. You better be just as fast. And so as it turned out, through a series of situations, Matt did come to work with me. He's my new protege. and he's already, studied it and learning it. And so the advice that I give is be around it, be in it, do it. Whatever the job is, get it ready. And, you have to be a big multitasker, which he is, and two other people that I've worked with are really great multitaskers. You've got to have just a really burning desire to want to do live television. You got to have guts, and you got to have a thick skin, because things are going to go wrong and people are going to be looking at you, and it's going to be embarrassing. And you're going to do a show, you're going to get taken off a show, you're going to live through days where you think the whole world came to an end and they're looking at you. Everybody stopped and looked at you, and it's going to hurt. And then you're going to try to pick it up, and then you're going to try to believe in yourself again. And then you're going to have ups and downs, and you're going to have to just be able to keep on going. Ultimately, I think for live directors, which it's not for everybody, as you know, having done it, Steve, you have to be extremely fast. You have to, I just wrote this into the book. You have to think fast, you have to cue fast, you have to talk fast, you have to be fast. You have to harness your adrenaline, because it's going to run 220 over 120 just like that. And you got to be able to pull yourself and check it. And then you got to be able to go really, at lightning speeds and not be afraid of it. And you got to do it for a long time in the kind of shows that I do, for 3-4 hours at a time. So whatever you do to get you there, whether you race a car for fun, or you play tennis, or you have to think fast, or you have to multitask, or you're doing, ambidextrous type things, your ability to multitask, listen. You have to go into a restaurant and hear 19 conversations at one time. You just have to be of that dysfunction and have those dysfunctionalities, and then you're ready to be a live director.
What's the one thing that has changed most about television since you started doing it?
I think that television today is not the television that it was in 1948 or 1949. Yes, there were 3 networks because of radio that segued into television. But today, we're run by corporations, we're run by middle management, we're run by vice presidents in suits all across the board in every network station, cable station, that want to be producers and want to infuse their concepts into the creative process. And I respect their job, and I respect the fact that they have the power to pick and choose. But what I don't respect is many of them are not qualified to do the creative element of it, just as I'm not qualified to go in and make a merger or a deal. And I wish that was respected. We've lost entirely our creative rights as directors, writers, producers, actors, musicians. And I implore the smart suits, the people that do what they do best, let us make these pictures for you. You'll be a star. You can take all the credit, but we'll be back in a glorious age. We can't do this by committee. When I did David Lean's American Film Institute salute, he said, boys and girls, popular to contrary belief, picture making is not a democracy.
How would you like to be remembered?
That's a good question. Well, there was a time when I thought my epitaph might be great director, but what a bastard. And then I think now I'd like to be remembered as a great leader, first and foremost, a leader of men. That's how I want to be remembered. He is a great leader.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.